Can you address the specific ethical challenges relating to those diseases, particularly dementia and Alzheimer's, how important it is to plan far in advance because the course of those illnesses is often quite long and personality changes and so on occur that can make decision-making quite difficult?
Yeah, I think these are the most difficult diseases to plan for. In my own ethics practice at the hospital, the biggest increase I'm seeing is in patients in their 7th, 8th, and 9th decades who've lost the ability to make their own decisions for any number of reasons, but particularly for the dementias. And often families are coming to me to say, well, we need to do a power of attorney now, and really you have to be able to talk like we are now to be able to do those documents. So I find as the family, you have to get really assertive with your loved ones when the diagnosis is made or that first time you notice something slipping. Now, I'm thinking about my own self and the fact that I left my keys in the refrigerator the other day while putting groceries away. When you see those first signs of something slipping, it's really important to be really assertive about planning, about thinking ahead about what that means. But certainly when you get the diagnosis, the problem is when you get the official diagnosis, it's often too late. So I think you have to begin to think about how, and this goes back to the question that this gentleman asked, how do you know when to stop? You have to know your loved one so well to be able to answer that question when life becomes overly burdensome, if you will. I know that sounds sort of weird to put life and burdensome in one sentence, but how do you know when to keep doing things? If the person's still happy, if they get some enjoyment, they may not know you. But if they're still happy, if they can still be fed, for a lot of the people I talk to, the line they draw in the sand is when their loved one becomes unable to remember to eat. And they maybe even had a conversation at some point in the past about a feeding tube. That's often sort of a marker that people use. Or maybe they try a feeding tube and it works for a period of time, but then they have to actually tie the person into the bed to keep them from pulling out the tube. That's another line in the sand. So I think it's helpful as the family to consider, where are those lines for me? What would be the best thing for my loved one? And it's a dignity kind of question, and for everybody that's different in terms of what they think, but I think you really have to err on the side of making sure they're comfortable, making sure that they don't have fear. They may not know you, but they may know other kinds of things, touch, sound, animals, very helpful with patients like this. I don't know if that gets at your question, David.
Well, I was going to actually kind of spin off the edge of that a little bit in terms of planning well in advance. We tend to think of this as an old person's problem. I point out that Terry Schiavo was in her 30s. Mm-hmm. Nancy Cruzan was in her 20s. Right? Yeah. So even if one anticipates reasonably good health, it makes some sense to say these are the circumstances that would make life unacceptable to me. Now. Recognizing also that one's opinion on this is probably going to change as time goes on. And that's okay, we all evolve. I mean, it's the way we go. So these should morph over time. They should change over time. But it's not too soon to plan, even if you're 20 years old.